My name is Keith Kornelson, and I am the almost brand new ag fieldman for Foothills County. Been here for about 6 months. So I just wanted to set some ground rules before I start today. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that kind of overlaps with what Karen says. So if they ever, whatever I say disagrees with what Karen said, please disregard me and go with what Karen said, okay? Because she probably knows, and I probably made a mistake or something. But anyway, I'm pleased to be here. Pleased that Foothills County allowed me to come. And so the first thing I'd like to do is that, I got these fancy new hats, and I wanted to give one of these out to somebody who was here because, you're out here listening to this. And so I'm wondering if there's anybody here who's ever been, besides Caleb, of course, he was the ag fieldman before me. Is there anybody who's ever been to the Foothills County Agriculture Service Board, their new farm by Silvertip? Anybody ever been there before? Oh, that's a tough one, eh? So maybe next time you'll have to come out there because I guess I'll have to keep this hat. I'll I'll think of another way to give this hat out later. Anyway, it's good to be here. So as part of the Agriculture Service Board, I'm the manager of Ag Services, Keith Kornelson again, and I have an assistant agricultural fieldman. Her name is Bree Webb. And along with that, we have a new opening, actually. It's going to be actually posted next week for a rural conservation advisor. And besides those 3 full-time staff, we also have 5 full-time staff that work with us at the ASB farm there in Silvertip. And so they're doing things like taking care of, they're doing all the grunt work, they're doing the chainsawing, the spraying, and the mowing of our roadways and our land that we own. Yeah, so that's so this is a little bit more about the Rural Conservation Advisor. I thought I may as well use this opportunity to advertise for it to see if you know somebody or know somebody who wants a job. This will be posted tomorrow. So this is like hot off the press. This is brand new information. So once again, maybe the most important thing to look at there is just if you want some more information on that, you just go to our website tomorrow. That is not today, but tomorrow. And you'll find some information on that. If you know some young kids or maybe yourself is looking for something brand new, that would be the place to go for that. So along with agriculture service boards, we have a group. These are the people that are on our board. You might recognize some of those names. I'm not sure. We have 3 counselors up here. These are the 3 counselors that are on our board. And then these are 4 members at large. The counselors are appointed to the board every year, and the members at large are appointed every 3 years. So, I mean, this is depending on which county you're from, you can get involved with agriculture services this way. So just want to give a shout out if you want to get more involved with the county and agriculture services. This is a good way to do it, to get on this board in your county. It's not necessarily set up this way in every county. Sometimes some counties have just the counselors on the board, but sometimes it's set up like this where you got your members at large. So just so you know, that's open to you, especially if you're from Foothills County and you want to get involved, please come talk to me afterwards. That'd be wonderful. So this is my family. So just moved down from up north, from St. Paul country area, northeast of Alberta. And my daughter graduated, she moved out. So lots of new stuff has been happening in my life, getting used to this area and getting to know the producers and farmers around this area. So anyway, of course, why I'm here is to talk a little bit about a little incident I had, or not an incident, but a story I want to tell, I guess. And so it's all about being a good neighbor. And so it made me think of one of my first stories I had when I was an agriculture fieldman. Up there, they often tag a lot of things on. It's not necessarily just agriculture jobs ag fieldmen do. But one of my jobs up in my old, where I used to roam, was I had to take care of dogs. And so if there was a dog issue, I had to go, solve that problem sort of thing or intervene. And so I think it was my second day on the job. I was called up to a community close to St. Paul called Ashmont. And somebody's dog was going into somebody else's yard and pooping there, and so that was that's kind of why I got my my degree, right, to deal with these things like this, to deal with dog poop. But that's where I was at the time, so I figured I better enjoy this. So anyway, so I went to go talk to the person who owned the dog, and the first thing, he was home, surprisingly, and I talked to him and said, hey, your dog is it's It's running into your neighbor's yard. And he's like, that can't be. I keep my eye on my dog all the time. It's not my dog. And I said, well, I think he's pretty sure because he's actually watched your dog run over and, do your business on your yard. He's like, I keep my eye on the dog all the time. And I said, well, this usually happens in the morning is when this guy notices. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. Well, when I let my dog out in the morning, I close the door and have breakfast and I come and let the dog back in. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's when it's happening. Exactly there. Now you're proving my point here a little bit. You're not keeping your eye on that. So he's like, well, okay, well, he was kind of visibly upset. And he's like, well, I'm going to take care of this issue. And I thought, oh, great. That means you're actually going to take care of your dog, right? That's what that means, right? So anyway, so I said, thank you very much. And I drive away. And as I'm driving away, I'm kind of getting to the highway. I said, I should turn around and ask I should get this guy's number because, I bet this guy's going to cause some more issues. And so I can call him next time. I don't have to drive out. Anyway, so I turn my truck around and head back to this guy's yard. And here is this guy. I won't mention his name, but he was in the middle of the street fighting his neighbor. So they were actually going fist to fist like this. They were, and so it kind of reminded me later on, I'm like, well, that's what he said. He was going to take care of it. He's going to beat up his neighbor, right? So anyway, I wanted to kind of label my talk, be a good neighbor, right? Because that's what this is all about. If ground squirrels, if they knew lines and they knew kind of just to stay in somebody's property, well, maybe there wouldn't be an issue, right? But the problem is when they cross that line and this will be a case where that happened, of course, right? So anyway, so Richardson ground squirrels have been a problem like throughout from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So this is just a quick search online, and this is from kind of right before World War I. This was posted online, and you can kind of see they're kind of making those gophers look like Germans or something, I think, and they're set to attack this poor little farm here. Look, they're coming from over here and they're attacking, so we got to make sure that we take care of business there. And then, of course, this is something I found. This is happening today. So then in this RM in Saskatchewan, you can still get 50 cents per tail. So I think Karen mentioned it was 3 cents 100 years ago. So it's gone up quite a bit now as you get 50 cents a tail. So this RM is south of Regina near Big Beaver is what it's called. So I have no idea where that is, but this is south of Regina. And of course, the future. What does the future hold, right, for gophers? So. I'm kind of liking this setup, and I know this is a bit funny. I'm not sure where we're going to start strapping guns to these things, but I bet maybe the future will be using drones to take care of these things. Maybe to count them or to, because you can get, I'm sure we'll be using them somewhat in the future to take care of gophers. Maybe we'll see. I guess we'll see. That's my prediction, though. So don't hold me to it, please. So I just want to talk. Kieran touched on this a little bit. So some legislation surrounding. This is kind of the boring part of my talk, but hopefully we can wade our way through this a little bit. So this is kind of some of this. This is one of the legislations that Ag Service Boards take care of, and so there's something called the Agricultural Pest. See if I get this right, Alberta Pest Act, or the APA, and so it has a list of pests on there, right? So things that you have to take care of, or in this case, with the gopher, it's listed as a nuisance, and so it's listed as a nuisance in this legislation, and so it says you may take care of it. So surprisingly enough, if you take care of gophers on your property, some people actually don't want you to do that. I'm not sure why, but maybe they think the gophers are, should be left alone or whatever. But you, as a landowner, or even as a renter, you have the right to get in there and do something about these things. You can take care of them, right? Now, we mentioned a lot of crazy ways to take care of them. Now, I don't want to say every way is the right way, but you want to make sure you're doing it safely. And if you're using any kind of pesticide, you're using that too with label instructions there. And so, hopefully, I don't give any other directions today. But if I ever do wander off label, if you ever do wander off label, you could get into trouble if somebody finds out about it, I suppose. So the Ag Service Board Act, this is one of the, I would say there's like 4 main acts that we take care of, and this is another one. So this is kind of the one that we used in the county I'm from, St. Paul there, or are still using. But it has pretty vague, quite broad verbiage there. It kind of just says like, hey, if your ag land is in trouble, if it's not being productive, whatever, then something can be done. And so I'm going to just get into that soon. But so something can be done if the Ag Service Board in this case finds through some kind of investigation that, yeah, this land's pretty bad. It's affecting the neighbors and everything else. And so typically what happens in this case is, or what could happen, the Ag Service Board Act talks about this, is there could be a hearing, right? So if there's a hearing, talking about the land, and typically the landowner comes to this and they have a hearing, they kind of discuss what's going on in the land. They can choose to kind of get into some kind of official agreement with the landowner to take care of the pest, or the county in some cases could go right to where they take over the land. So it's pretty broad in this legislation where at this appeal or is it in this case the council, the council, it's not the Ag Service Board, but the council, they can actually decide with recommendation from the Ag Service Board to take control, to take ownership of the land, essentially for up to 3 growing seasons. I wonder if I got that on the next page. Yeah, for up to 3 crop years, just to keep the land under control. So of course, this is kind of like your last step for an Ag Service Board. Like, we never really want to do this type of behavior. We far more and far enjoy more to work with the producer on these things. But every once in a while, it's for whatever reason, it doesn't work out that way. But this is some of the things that we could be doing, right? So having researched this, when I was getting into actually using the Ag Service Board Act 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of did a test study, and I went out and asked other Ag Service Boards in the province, like, what had they done, or had they ever used this for this type of thing where, where you actually are getting into supervision or taking over some land from a producer. And I could only find one other example of this in the last, say, 10 years or so that it had been used. So it's a very uncommon thing, but, it's one of those things that's out there, one of the tools that counties in the province can use. So part of it is, of course, if they disagree with, you taking the land under supervision, or they disagree with you taking land, they can appeal that to, and it's just to the provincial courts. They can appeal that to them. And so once there's an official appeal, it's kind of the Ag Service Board Act goes into very details how to do that, how to lodge an appeal. Then, we pretty much got to wait, right? We got to wait for that appeal to be passed. And then after the appeal passes, then we can move forward. So, or maybe the appeal will find that the county's in error there. I don't know how that works, but it could be either or there. And so anyway, I just wanted to get into to a bit of a case study here. So this was in the county I'm coming from. So kind of one of those things that you just kind of happen upon. So there's a bit of history for this site. What can I tell you about this? So I first started at the County of St. Paul in 2012, and we actually happened to have been building a road right close to the quarters that I'm going to talk about. And I noticed there was a bad gopher issue there at the time. You could see them, you could hear them. But after we built that road and we seeded the ditches there, never really heard about it until a couple of years later. So we received a complaint here about Richardson ground squirrels ruining crops. And having kind of been in the area, this is kind of a picture of the area in 2023. There's an overhead picture of the 3 quarters. So the 3 quarters there are kind of, let's give you a little idea of what this was like. So these are the 3 quarters that were had lots of gophers in them. And I would say out of these 3, maybe you had about 100 acres of, where you took a step and there was a hole, you took another step, there was a hole, you took another step, there was a hole. And you can kind of see, so in 2023, all the land surrounding it is actually in crop. Now, back when I first started, 2012, a lot of this was pasture still. So this is kind of a change over time, right? People maybe got out of cattle, new farmers came in, and they, maybe better chemicals or whatever, and they could take care of the weeds. And so this is all kind of turning to cropland. But this here is a pasture, but this is also owned by the same landowner. But he's stuck in the pasture. You can kind of see the issue, right? So if this was all pasture, 50, 60 years ago or whatever, maybe you wouldn't be noticing the issues as much because everybody would have had gophers in their land. So in 2022, after I received a call from the the affected landowner. I'm going to have a tough time differentiating between these two. I went to go talk to the person who owned the land, and they assured me everything was under control. They were keeping, they were doing their due diligence, and so this is where I first started to learn about Richardson ground squirrels. Essentially, so they were using. So this is the one that we were talking about earlier. So they had purchased this tool from the manufacturer is in North Dakota. So I actually ended up phoning. It's kind of I kind of like doing this stuff. I feel maybe I watch too many private investigator shows, so I like trying to figure out what's exactly going on, right? And so far I've never really found too much of an interesting thing, but this I thought was pretty close, So so I was talking to the manufacturer. He's like, "Oh yeah, I know that thing. Yeah, we sell a lot of those things here in North Dakota in this area, and it's just for pocket gophers," he said. I'm like, "Oh yeah, pocket gophers." Like, and then he wanted to know where I was calling from. He said, "Well, I was calling from Canada." He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember we sold one of those to Canada. I remember that." And so they'd actually only sold one of these into Canada at the time when I called, and so I thought that was kind of curious, the whole thing. And so when I, during my course of investigation, so he was the producer was using this as a control, and like Karen said, it's not on the label to control Richardson ground squirrels. I think because they probably burrow too deep and they don't tend to follow the burrows they make. And he was also using at the time he wasn't using the correct the pesticide he was using in this tool. It wasn't on the label to use for this. So it was zinc phosphide he was using in the tool, right? So it's not registered. So then I kind of started to have some of my doubts, because I thought, well, here's a tool, but he's using it for the incorrect pest and using it the incorrect pesticide as well for the tool. So bait stations, I got to learn a little bit about bait stations. So I actually phoned Life Attack, the makers of Rosal, and I talked to them about bait stations. And so they pretty much, on the label it says too, and that you got to put one of these up every acre, every hectare, pretty much if it's bad, right? And so in the 100 acres that it was bad, he had 5 bait stations that he was kind of moving around and from place to place, and that's how. So that was his control. I thought, oh, we're gonna have some issues here. Like we're gonna, it shouldn't be working, right? And so then anyway, I had to kind of figure out a way to see if it was working, right? So this is where I put my science hat on. I thought, hey, I can do this. I can figure this out. So essentially, this is what I did: is I counted gophers, and it was kind of funny because I was doing this over the course of like 3 years, and so like the people who lived in the area, they kind of got to know. They kind of got to see me out there with my binoculars looking for gophers, and they would honk their horn and stuff and kind of make fun of me, right? And here again, I'm thinking, oh, 4-year, went to a degree, and I'm counting gophers with binoculars. My goodness, like I've really hit the high times here in St. Paul. So anyway, I pretty much so this is kind of a bit of an outline of how I did it, and of course, whether this is scientific or not, I don't know. I talked a little bit to Karen and other people about this, and so I figured, well, this might be a good start. Eh? Maybe we can figure something out here. So I would just stand at these points here, like this, and then there was kind of something here that would more or less where I could see there was like a ridge or something, or a ditch or whatever, right? And so I would stand here for 10 minutes, and that's actually quite a long time. And so and then you would constantly scan back and forth like this, right, in 10 minutes, and then you count how many gophers you saw. Essentially, all I did. And at first when I did, I'm like, oh man, I'll never be able to figure out, because you go over once and you're like, did I see that one again, or did it, but actually you get kind of a skill at it. So they never asked it when I did my interview for Foothills County, but I've got quite a skill in counting gophers. So if you guys ever need some help with that, I mean, I know how to do it. I can, if I've seen a gopher once, I can recognize it, right? So once again, a very useful skill to have, especially in this country. So anyway, what I thought was kind of interesting, I'll just show you. I wonder if it's going to come up here now. I'm going to go back to. I'm going to jump to this one here. So this is kind of the counts I did. So I would add all those 5 points together, and I come up with this number, right? So here in May, it's 40, and then here I was doing it kind of more often just because I was learning how to do it. Anyway, and so you can kind of see here, I thought it was kind of interesting. So every year it kind of gave me like, if this was a bell, it would kind of give me this curve, right? Where it would start low and would get high. You know, that's where all and you could tell there's lots of juveniles at the time, right? It would get high and then it would kind of sink down low again, right? Um, so this is just the 1 year. This is 2023, but from year to year, these numbers would all increase, right? And so that kind of told me something, right? That kind of told, well, whatever he's doing is not working, right? Because like the numbers are increasing, um, and uh, and so anyway, so I didn't want to do this alone, so I actually invited Alberta Ag out to visit me, and they agreed it was a problem, so this wasn't just in my head. As far as and by the time 2023 rolled around, I think I had 4 neighbors who were kind of worried about the situation. They were losing crops, and I found it kind of interesting because there was actually only one of the 4 was willing to come forward and actually complain about it to me, which I thought was kind of curious. There must be some psychological thing, because typically you don't want to complain about your neighbor. You want to get along with them. Um, I guess in some ways that's what the Ag Service is there for, is just to give a little, to be a bridge between 2 neighbors sometimes, hopefully not a wedge, hopefully more of a bridge than a wedge. So anyway, I was trying to be a bridge here, but I don't know if it ever succeeded with these 2, with these neighbors. But anyway, I got some information there. So all I can say is when we kind of went through this, the landowner seemed to know what he was doing and didn't really want our help. So that's kind of, the first kind of warning signal. And I'll show a picture of this later, but in 2023, just one field, of course, there was, I think 3 canola fields that were affected that year and 2 or 3 barley fields. But just on this one field, there was about 5 acres of canola that was eaten, and didn't produce, right? And so it took a while for our Ag Service Board, I think, to kind of switch their perspective, sort of. Like, it wasn't necessarily taking somebody's land or being mean to them in any way, but it was more protecting the landowners around this area, because like this is pretty significant stuff here. This is pretty significant, and these guys, they were, for their part, were doing their best. They were baiting and they were shooting and they were trying to keep the gophers from coming in, but there were just too many of them. And the one landowner didn't allow them into their property, right, to control their gophers, which is another, I didn't quite understand that either. Anyway, so that was kind of where we were at. So this is kind of how the county got involved when we really started to take note of the damage that was being done, and you can put a number to that, right? So, really, for this one field, if the one landowner would have just spent this money controlling gophers the proper way, I mean, there wouldn't have been an issue, right? So the numbers counted. So this is just pictures of that. Pictures say 1,000 words, so maybe I should just be quiet now and just let you guys look at this. But so this here, you can this is a barley field. You can kind of see where there's all this delayed growth. So that's all the ground squirrels coming over and eating the barley when it was small. And here, this is the canola field. You can kind of see. So this here is where the RGS were, and so they were running across and they were eating this canola field. So yeah, the farmer's pretty disheartened and wanted something done. So this is some other damage. This is when our public works got involved a little bit. So this is a highway that the county was taking care of, but they were making a hole right underneath the highway like this. That's how many there were. And so I don't know, like, I don't know what the ramifications of something like that are, but I mean, obviously that's going to compromise your road somewhat over time, right? And maybe a lot if you're not careful, right? So anyway, so 2024 comes around, and so I completed some more counts showing the numbers were increasing. And so anyway, this is where I got the heck out of Dodge, because things were getting kind of hot there. But so this is actually where I moved to the Foothills County, right around this area, 2024, summer 2024. So I left this all on my coworker's plate there. So I apologized to her, and she forgave me already. So that's all good. Forgiveness is an important thing, right? So so anyway, they actually had a formal hearing in 2024, like in the summer. of 2024 into the fall. And so they actually came up with a supervision plan. So they're going to work together with the producer in this case. So it's kind of like an official document of some kind where they both sign off on it, and they're gonna follow these rules. And so now, it's this stage in the game where I wish I could say, and they both lived happily ever after, and they went on and had a good life. But I don't know. This is still to be determined how this is going to turn out. Um, I like to always have my positive hat on. I like to think my glass is half full. But I don't know that, from what I was, interacting with the one landowner, it didn't seem like it was going to work out. But, then again, maybe sometimes just me leaving, maybe that was enough maybe I was the problem. I'm just thinking about that now. It can't be it, right? I wasn't the problem. But you got to think about that sometimes, maybe you're the problem, right? So, uh, I had a good talk with him my last day at work, so I don't think maybe I wasn't the problem there. But so anyway, so that's where this is at. So it's now gone to supervision. They've decided on a plan. So that if the producer doesn't follow his side of the plan, then the council can decide to take it under reclamation, which again, I've really only heard it one other time happening where they've taken the Ag Service Board Act and they've actually taken over, I think it was 4 quarters of land near Edmonton. So in that case, it was a weed issue, but they kind of took it from the producer and they kind of gave it to a renter, which is what typically happens. The mitigation is typically rented out to another producer to take care of the land and get it under control, and then in 1, 2, 3 crop cycles, the land is in control and given back to the landowner. So yeah, that's the ASB Act. That's the one I was just talking about near Edmonton. I think that one worked out well. I think I feel like when I was talking to that ag fieldman, I think it was still in the middle of it. So but the weeds were taken care of already after year 1 or 2. And the landowner was happy because he was getting now rent, and so that was working out well there, I think. So hopefully we don't have to move to reclamation, or they don't have to move to reclamation in the county. But I mean, it's just a tool we use, right? And I've talked to Alberta Ag about this, and it's kind of a big stick. It's kind of a big deal when you use legislation like this. So that's why it's very rare. Like I say, in the last 10 years, I can only really think of these two. But having said that, I mean, it's something we could use. What Ag Services, across the province prefer is this education and working with the producer, before we have to get any official thing involved. So ASBs are made of producers, they own land, and they want to, solve this issue before we have to go to any kind of official thing. Yeah, and I sort of think the only way this kind of acts or these kind of legislations used if the landowner doesn't want to work with the county or is like stepping away. I feel over my time when I work with landowners, I get 3 kinds. One that's happy to work with you, one that will never work with you, and then the one that kind of says they'll work with you but they don't. Like they'll promise something and they don't happen. And it reminds me a lot of my kids. I think I had all 3 of those type of kids. I had a compliant one not compliant, and one that would just say yes and just disappear, right? And not do the thing. So then it gets frustrating, all those, except that first one that always complies. That's man. Well, I got one of each, so I guess I don't know. Anyway, so these are some of the things I learned. I learned how to count RGS, obviously, and it seemed to be a good way to tell if it was working or not. Education is important. I do think that lots of the time we can get there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it's hard to sift through it. And that's kind of why I think we're here, and why Karen is here to kind of help you guys through that, to find the best ways and uses of it. And once you know it's a problem, maybe take care of it, as soon as possible, because it typically doesn't go away. It just gets worse over time. So, so this is the thing. This is the tool that I had found when I was going to help this guy. So this is the one that we're just waiting on approval to see if this is actually, you can use this with zinc phosphide if you're applying it straight to the hole. So I don't know, this little trigger, this is pretty simple. It's got, holds the bait up here. There's a little trigger. lets out, you know, 1 tablespoon and then it delivers it into the hole, you know, if you're using it that way. So it kind of saves you back a bit if it's legal. Once again, I'm not sure of that. So, but it is, you know, available for sale in Alberta. So, and maybe they just don't mention what you're supposed to use it for. I don't know, but you can buy this in Alberta. It's $80. The closest place is the closest place is Lethbridge. So, if I'd have known there's guys from Lethbridge coming out, I would ask them to bring one up, but I didn't know that. So, anyway, so here's a few things. Here's my little plug about some of the other acts that we take care of. This is the Weed Act. So there's some little booklets at the back that kind of explain this better than I will. It has a list of the weeds that are either noxious or prohibited noxious weeds in Alberta. And just, you know, that the landowner has a responsibility to take care of them, as does the county to help the landowner, as does the county to take care of weeds on their property. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. So part of the Weed and the Pest Act and the Service Board Act and the Soil Act is that the county can inspect land, private land. And so I'm a registered inspector, and so are many other workers who work for Foothills County. So sometimes you may see us in your land, or maybe if you're from a different county, you'll see a different county in your land, but that's what we're doing. We're looking for things. So, and with this legislation, you know, it allows us to do that. So the Pest Act, that's the one where I was talking about the gophers are listed as a nuisance on. So you may, but there's another list of actual pests and where the farmer or landowner has to take care of them. And one of the more common ones that people know about, so clubroot is on this list. And so if you find clubroot on your land, you have to take actions to take care of that. And so sometimes counties get involved in that, and sometimes we just look for it and let the producer know about it. But it's on there as long as. And so the Soil Conservation Act. This is one I've never really had to use, but I you know, close to here in the county of Newell, I took this picture off the internet. So this is what can happen if you're having soil erosion issues. And so so this cleanup is pretty expensive. You got to dig it out of the ditch and put it back on the field, and that's all. The burden of that is all on the landowner. So then you have to be very careful that, you know, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. But once again, the whole point of the Soil Conservation Act is to make sure that erosion doesn't happen. So, yeah. So at the county, we got some rentals too. If you guys are renting stuff, this is a list of our rentals. We're pretty cheap with this stuff. I don't think any of this is, you know, I think we're still in like in the 90s with these prices, I think. So this is kind of some of the stuff that we offer to help people take care of weeds, to help people take care of other things as well. Yeah. So we also have 1080. We give a 1080. This is a coyote. When if you have cattle or some kind of livestock and there you actually have predation on your livestock, then we can help you with that. And we currently right now it's not available, but it will be available soon. There's a bit of a glitch with Health Canada or PMRA about this, but that will be coming back soon. And so this is some this can be used if you've actually had some issues with coyotes in your livestock. Most of our calls about trees and weeds. We take care of all the trees and weeds and grass and all the living things in the county ditches and in our land. So that's kind of where most of our issues happen. That's what our guys do every day. We take care of that stuff. So this is where we're located. If you guys are ever out looking for us, we just moved, I guess, last year, the year before. The county Foothills shop is in Alderside, but we're across the highway in close to a community called Silvertip. So anyway, I'm not sure that's where we're at now. I got to still tell people they always end up going to the shop and wondering where we're at, but that's where we're at. It's a similar picture to what Karen had there, but yeah, any questions? I'll try to remember to repeat them too, I guess. Yes, Caleb. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So that's Caleb Scott. I know him because he used to be the ag fieldman here in Foothills County, and now he's in Vulcan. But yeah, he's got a different place you can buy those applicators. So yeah. Yeah. Yes. Oh. Okay. So this guy just asked whether there's any grazing techniques that had to do with that infestation, and yeah, it was overgrazed. Yep. And Yeah, for sure. And then maybe that's the biggest part, right? Because then you know that if the grass is longer, they're less likely to take hold. And there was no trees anywhere nearby, and like there was none of that. Yeah, for sure, that was part of the issue.